God is good, and each day that passes brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Today I wanted to talk about the Ranger. I wanted to talk about all the information that we know so far about the Ranger and kind of break it down and give people a general idea of what the Ranger is going to play like, what their abilities will be, etc. Just to help you with planning out your character before the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Before I begin though, I do want to say real quick that if you're new to the Nathan NAPALM channel, please consider subscribing, especially if you're interested in Pantheon related content or old school MMOs, because that's what we talk about here at the Nathan NAPALM channel. Moving on though, let's talk about this Ranger. So before I get into all these details guys, please understand at the time of this recording the game is still quite a while out, and they are going to be doing a lot of testing on these classes for sure, trying to balance them out. And keep in mind that these abilities could change by launch. They could be totally different, they could be balanced differently, etc. So keep that in mind as you go, and also keep in mind that there are going to be additional abilities that are considered rare abilities out in the wilds of Terminus. So out there in the wild you can access some special abilities that are more rare. But let's get right to it. So first of all, the Ranger can be played by 3 different races. The Elf, of course. The Elf can be a Ranger. I would be totally disappointed if they couldn't. Also the Halfling, which will be a really cool race I feel like to be a Ranger in, and as well as the Human. So the Elf, the Halfling, and the Human can all be the Ranger. So the Ranger, what is it? Well, just to give you a basic definition of what the Ranger does, they go out into the wilds of Terminus, they dig into the mysteries because they're more attuned with nature. So they're very versatile, they're ferocious warriors, but they're very united with the land and the animals that make up the land. So what kind of group role does the Rangers have? Well, they're considered melee and ranged DPS as well as utility. Now, although the Ranger is great at melee and ranged combat, they're able to go back and forth between those two with elegant ease. In close combat, the Rangers use one-handed weapons over two-handed. As we're soon going to see though, they can use, it seems as though at least, that they can dual wield, and we'll get to that in a minute. So they're just going to kind of be going back and forth between close quarters combat, and then masterfully backing up to start using their bows and crossbows to inflict lethal ranged damage, which they can use that to restrain enemies, illuminate their environment, cause torches out into the world, and we'll get to that in a minute, as well as set traps or flee from danger. This makes me feel like in this description also, and as we know from previous incantations of Ranger type classes and other MMOs, that I do believe the Ranger will be your go-to kiting class. I also, as we get into this, believe they'll be pretty darn good at soloing. But we'll get to that in a minute as we talk about some of these abilities. But let's talk about their combat resource. So what resource does the Ranger pull from in order to do their different abilities? Well, it is called momentum. So during combat, Rangers will constantly generate momentum as a percentage of the damage that they deal. So the more damage that they deal, the more momentum they will gain. Certain melee and range abilities will increase the momentum by a certain amount when used, while other abilities, of course, will have a momentum cost in order to be performed. Now, also worth mentioning, besides the abilities that use the momentum, is that the faster that their melee and ranged attack speed becomes, up to 20% increase when momentum is full. So they can actually increase their melee and ranged attack speed by their momentum being full. So it's definitely going to be one of those things where if you play as a Ranger, you're going to want to get that momentum full as much as possible, because a 20% increase is quite a bit. So as you're using the momentum for abilities, keep in mind you'll want to get your momentum back to full as quickly as possible, because your attack speed is going to go down just because you use that ability. So it's going to cause this kind of tug and war with the player back and forth, trying to keep the momentum full, and not just keeps enough momentum to do the next ability like a lot of other classes, but actually trying to keep it completely full to get that great attack speed. So that's going to make this class very interesting all alone, just that one aspect. Now let's talk about what does the ranger wear? What kind of armor can it have? So it can wear cloth, leather, or light mail. Its weapons will be bows, crossbows, most one-handed weapons. Alright, now that's one-handed as in you put it in one hand, okay? I'm going to get to it in a minute, I promise, but I do think that the ranger will have the ability to dual wield, and I'll explain that in a second. I could be wrong about that theory, but we'll get to that. Now let's talk about the abilities that the ranger can do. So first off, we have a passive, which is VALEGUARD'S STRIDE. This increases your movement speed after being outside for a short time. Returning back inside, though, will cancel the effect after a short time. So while you're outdoors, you are a ranger after all, you get an increased movement speed. Once again, it doesn't say for the group, it says for you. Will there be a rare ability where you can cast it on your group? We'll see. Next up, we have Lay of the Land, Ferret Scout. This basically allows the player to control a small ferret just to kind of scout out a short distance, like check things out, see if it's safe, that kind of thing. It's going to be very handy, especially in a world as dangerous as Terminus is going to be. Lay of the Land, Hawk Scout. This controls a Vale Hawk. Basically, so you can scout an even further distance ahead from the air, but you can only use this one outside, of course. Then we have Beckon, Vale Hawks. This actually beckons to Vale Hawks to lift and carry the ranger to a target location. That's going to be very cool, very usable. We'll see how that all plays out. I mean, if the ranger's being attacked, can they use the Vale Hawks to get them a good distance away from the target that's attacking them? Should it be dangerous? We'll see. I don't know. Beckon Vale Striders. So this one beckons a pack of Vale Striders, which actually run alongside the ranger, which increases their movement speed dramatically for a short time. So that definitely feels like a situation to get you out of trouble quickly, or just used as often as you can just to kind of get even more speed. Then we have Hidden Snare. This is a hidden trap that it wraps around the enemy's feet with tight thorny vines. This is a root. In other words, it holds the enemy in place for up to a maximum of 30 seconds. It also causes damage over time, but any additional damage besides the damage done from the ability itself will break the root. Do not break the root, guys. Holy crap, it is damaging to the group and the party when you break that root. Okay, so if there's multiple mobs and you see those thorny vines go up, you better not break it. Let that enemy chill for a minute. The tank can maybe do some provokes and things on it and get its attention, and then we need to let that be and go back to the main target and assist that tank. Anyway, moving forward, we got Flare. Flare is where the ranger basically, they launch a burning arrow, and it sticks on the ground, not to the target, but on the ground at a target location, which acts as a torch. So this is not an attack, this is actually to light up a darkened area, okay, so that you can see, because as we should know by now, Pantheon is a dangerous place, but it's even more dangerous at night. LADWEN'S WHISPER. This reduces the aggro radius of the target animal for a short duration. So in other words, the way I'm seeing this could actually be interpreted a couple of ways. I've actually gotten a couple of arguments about what this means. So the way I take it when I read it is that this is for the pet of the actual ranger, that it reduces their aggro radius so that they're not aggroing things. But someone else has argued with me that what it's actually talking about is it's only usable on an animal, not like a monster or a zombie, but an actual mob, and that you can cast this on them to make them not aggro as easily, so you'd have to be way closer to them to aggro. So we'll see about that. That's interesting either way, or maybe both ways. Next up, we have tracking. This basically allows the ranger to be able to notice things others would easily miss. So what does that do for you? Well, you can find specific targets in a large area by tracking their location. So this would be very good if you're looking for a specific mob, maybe for a drop, maybe for a quest, but basically the ranger's able to kind of scan the area and find a specific mob or target. Then we have Kalen's Command. This is basically the ranger speaks in a commanding voice to target animal, immediately ending combat and making the target animal friendly towards the ranger for a limited time. So basically taking an animal and making it the ranger's pet. Then we have Forage. This is really cool. So this is where the ranger surveys the surrounding area for a chance at finding natural food, drink, or unique ingredients that the ranger can use to create bombs, tonics, and weapon coatings. So let's talk about the examples of things. These aren't all of them, by the way. This is just a few examples of things that the ranger could find while foraging for use. So number one will be the arrow coating, wild Hyacinth. So for a certain duration, the ranger's ranged attacks will apply a certain effect on the target. And that's probably going to depend on what kind it finds. So maybe a poison, maybe a blind effect, etc, etc. Then we have Sugarberry Tonic. This grants a bonus to momentum generation from abilities for a certain duration. So as we know, the ranger, if it has full momentum, does that 20% increase of their attack speed. So the Sugarberry Tonic will be very awesome for the ranger to get a hold of. Then we have the weapon coating Brightfire Sap. So this, the ranger can apply to their blade of their weapon, causing it to glow, which gives them a weak but still a light source for 24 minutes. Very cool. And that application will be cool if the ranger's soloing or if the ranger's grouping and has no other light source to go off of, because keep in mind these dark caves, it's nighttime, that's very dangerous. Then we have Moonrose Balm. This increases the ranger's natural health regeneration by a certain percentage for a certain duration. Very cool and very, very awesome if you're soloing. I'm going to be mentioning soloing a lot with the ranger class because I see a lot of things here that sound like they're great for a ranger to be out in the wilds, out in the world, especially in the open world, where the ranger's really going to thrive, okay? Not that a ranger can't go down in the dungeons and things, but you'll notice a pattern here that because they're a ranger, because of the lore, because of what a ranger is, they're awesome when they're out in the wild, out in the open world. Alright, so let's talk about, that's all of those abilities that are their featured abilities. Let's talk a little bit about their melee abilities. So first up, they don't have a lot of them, by the way, but or at least that we know of now. So first up, we have the Ferocious Assault. This is basically where the ranger just unleashes a flurry of real quick attacks or strikes with both weapons. See, that's key right there, because that's the wording of Visionary Realms, not mine. And it says with both weapons. Now here's the deal with that. That can be taken two ways. Most likely what they meant was that the bow and their one-handed weapon. That's probably what they meant, right? But hold up now. If that's what they meant, let's think about this. How in the world would a ranger use a bow, the string and the bow handle, and pull an arrow back and release it, and also be swinging a sword or what have you, or a one-handed weapon, I should say, at the same time? How do you do that? Because operating a bow takes two hands, okay? Now, there's ways they could do it where it makes like a mirror image, or, you know, who knows? They could use their imagination. They could get away with it. So maybe that is what they meant. But it doesn't make sense if you think about it, of how a ranger would pull that off. How would you use, without, you know, unless rangers have three hands, you know what I mean, three arms. I don't think they do. I haven't seen any talk of that. Or if something crazy like a random animal comes along and holds one of the weapons for you, I don't see a way around it. So I do believe that this is pointing at dual wielding. But I like to always think, wait a minute now, did you just give us a little secret piece of information that the ranger, when they go into melee attacks, that they can dual wield? I think it makes sense for the lore, and I love when any class can dual wield. I just love it. I think we all do. So I think that's very interesting, and that's why I mentioned that earlier. That's my theory, but I do think that there will be that option. But anyway, so the ferocious attack, it inflicts physical damage with a chance, 50%, to interrupt the enemy's spell casting. So this interrupt chance will increase beyond 50% based on the agility and dexterity stats of the ranger. Okay, next up we have Beckon Thunderpaw. I love these. So this basically summons a bear into battle. We've seen this in some of the videos, in some of the streams of the game. So a bear comes into battle, it charges into the enemy, it knocks them down, it makes them more vulnerable to physical damage for a short duration. So if you got a lot of melee attackers, or what have you, if you're trying to set up, say you're soloing, right, and you're trying to set up to unleash some melee abilities real quick on them, you can get this bear out, knock them down, right, so they're a little bit incapacitated for a couple of seconds, then also increase your physical damage, so you can kind of unleash on them real quick. Next we have the Beckon Pantheress. Now this beckons a Pantheress into battle, which ravages your enemy for a short time, inflicting high damage and making them vulnerable to physical attacks. So the Pantheress, it sounds like to me, is the upgrade from the Thunderpaw. We see that a lot in these abilities that they'll mention too, but they actually are the same ability, just upgrade. Could be wrong, once again, because they do have quite a little bit different of an effect. But anyway, withdrawal. Basically what the ranger does, they kick off of the enemy, and they fire a point-blank shot, vaulting backwards 8 meters. So keep this in mind. As the ranger, right, is going from melee to ranged, back and forth. If you play Final Fantasy XIV, for example, the red mage in 14, not 11, is very similar to this. So it has an ability where they can kick off the enemy, they can get back out further, right, 8 meters, and it gives them a chance to go back into the ranged abilities from melee. It's kind of like a transition, alright? It'd be very good for that, because not only would it do some damage, it's an ability, a melee ability that gets you back into doing your ranged abilities, okay? And then it also automatically toggles you into your ranged auto attack. So that's what that ability's for. Alright, so let's talk about the ranged abilities. What can we do in ranged? So first up we have the Silent Arrow. This is a carefully aimed shot that inflicts big damage to your enemy. If your enemy is currently caught in a trap, this ability will critically hit. Additionally, Silent Arrow will inflict bonus damage if you're outdoors, out in the open world. Silent Arrow is only usable out of combat. Manually aimed, if in third-person view, activating this ability will move the camera into an over-the-shoulder perspective. First-person view will not be affected, of course. So this is an aimed shot, so this isn't just you click the ability, you got to aim it, you got to hit, and you can't be in combat. So this isn't something you do in the middle of battle. This is something you do to pull, right? This is a pulling ability. And you know, the cool thing about Pantheon, I really hope, is that we bring back these classes where their job, not their only job, but one of their jobs is to pull, right? And then the tank grabs that aggro. I really think that Pantheon's going to do that. I really do. I think once all these classes are all, you know, ready to go, that we're going to see a lot of that. We'll have a puller, right? Like we'll bring a ranger along, not only for that, but also to pull the bad guys to the party. Very cool though. I like the fact that you have to aim that. That's gonna, you know, I don't like action combat. I hate it. I think it ruins an MMO, right? But having an ability like this where you got to manually aim something, I like that because it kind of separates a crappy ranger from a good one, right? It gives it a little bit of that, a little bit more than the strategic value of using abilities and using the right ability at the right time, but also gives you a little bit of ability where it's up to you, right? And it's not just a chance or a dice roll. And I really like that. Not all the time, but sometimes. So like they do with the ranger. I really like that. That's awesome. Okay, next we have Warning Shot. This requires that the ranger have an offensive target. Keep in mind, you have a defensive target, you have an offensive target. Alright, so what the ranger does is they fire an arrow into the ground at the target location, which is attuned to the offensive target. Now, when this target moves within 10 meters of the warning shot, it will fire off a loud warning sound and relay a message that the target is approaching. I really think this is so unique and cool. So basically, the ranger can use this ability to say, say you're in a group, right? And you're in a weird situation. You're pulling in a dangerous area, and there's a named mob, let's just say, nearby. So the ranger's like, oh my gosh, you know, just in case, let me do a warning shot over here. And if that named mob starts coming within that range of my warning shot, then we'll all know, and we can be prepared to either get the heck out of the way so we don't get wiped, or at least we can be prepared for battle, right? I love that. That's so cool. Alright, next we have Harpoon Shot. This fires an arrow with a rope attached to it. This allows the ranger to pull the enemy 2 meters towards you, so pulling an enemy to you. Next we have Weighted Bolt. This fires a heavy, blunted bolt at your enemy with enough force to knock them 2 meters away from you. So we have Harpoon Shot to pull them closer, we have Weighted Bolt to push them away. Next up we have Glass Arrow. This is an AoE. So basically what it does, it fires a special arrow with a glass tip, and it explodes when it hits, and it does damage to nearby enemies with a chance to cause bleeding from the glass, obviously cutting them up. Very cool, I like that. And last, we have Aim to Kill. This is a rapid firing of 3 arrows at the enemy with a chance to fire up to 2 additional arrows based on your agility and dexterity stats. So you can fire a total, if you have high agility and dexterity, which is the main stats you want to work on with the ranger, then you actually could fire up to 5 arrows, right? And do some massive damage there. So guys, that wraps up the Ranger. I think it's a very cool class. Just like every class in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, they found a way to make it unique, to give it a lot of utility, and in my opinion, make it a very viable class to solo, and also just as much, if not more viable, in a group. And I love how they've just kind of given it its own feeling, its own kind of uniqueness that makes it just awesome. I think it's the coolest sounding Ranger class in the genre. I'm very excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Let me know, are you planning on playing a Ranger? Were you not thinking about one, but now you're thinking of doing one? Are you thinking you might roll one as an alt? Is it something you'll feel like will need to be in every party? Is it one of the classes you're going to be looking for to get in every party? Let me know in the comments below, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I at least gave you a little bit of insight, or maybe a theory or two, to make you think about the Ranger in a different way. And guys, real quick before I go, of course, if you are new to the Nathan NAPALM channel, please consider subscribing if you're interested in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen related content, or old school MMOs, because that's what we do here at the Nathan NAPALM channel. And one last piece of information before I go, I am going to be finishing up. There's a few classes I kind of skipped out on that I didn't give an in-depth video for. I will be finishing those up over the next week and releasing one every once in a while, maybe real quickly. We'll see how that all goes. But I do want to kind of finish it up because I just left some out. And I didn't do that because I don't like the classes. It was just the way that the news was rolling out for Pantheon. I just never went back and did some of these. So I'm going to be doing that. But anyway, guys, also I did want to let you guys know about my big project that I'm working on right now. I am taking the beautiful, wonderful lore of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and I'm making, I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a comic. I'm designing it like a comic, but I'm designing it for video. So there is some motion. There's, you know, it's not just static images, and it's not text, you know, bubbles. I'm talking. It has voice acting, but it's built like a comic, and it's going to tell the lore with some, in my opinion, beautiful artwork to go along with it that I'm going to be making myself. Now keep in mind though, when this does launch, that this is my interpretation, okay? In other words, we don't know what some of these characters actually look like, so I'm just kind of using my imagination. So don't think that I have some inside information of exactly what some of these dragons or some of these characters in the lore look like. I have no idea. I'm just making it up based on my imagination, how I see the character based on what we know from the lore, and, you know, just making it look cool. That's all. I'm sure when the game comes out that their artwork will totally trump mine. It'll be way cooler than everything I did. But it's just to give you a visual, just to tell the story in a visual way. And it's a really great way, I'm beginning to discover as I make this, to tell the lore. It's very exciting, it's very cool, and it's very fun to make. So I will be releasing my first one pretty soon, probably next week sometime. And I hope you guys enjoy that. Hope you're looking forward to it. Let me know what you think of that idea. And guys, until next time, God bless and happy gaming.